All right. Whoops. Welcome to the Live Courageously podcast show number 3 of 2022 and the 19th show since I started in 2022. Oh, this is 2023. Excuse me. It was number 3 of 2023. Anyway, I chose the title Live Courageously because that's been the conscious theme of my life for the last 2 years since the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, and an unconscious theme of my life for most of my life. If you haven't seen the previous 19 podcasts with some of my amazing friends sharing their powerful stories of overcoming all odds and going on to live their best lives, you can watch them on my John Duffy Live Courageously YouTube channel. And this show is about faith over fear. I believe fear is just a reaction, but courage is a choice. And I suggest that you consciously choose courage to get through life and to deal with whatever life may throw at you in the future. So today, let me introduce you to my guest and good friend, Henning Morales. Henning Morales is a best-selling author, a speaker, filmmaker, a mentor. Henning is widely considered a premier motivational speaker and thought leader. He's delivered keynote speeches to over 1 million people on 4 continents. His passion for providing motivation, guidance, counseling, and mentorship to young people to enable them to lead happy, productive lives has become his life's purpose. His inspiration stems from his personal experiences, having been a confused 17-year-old troublemaker who met some high-powered motivational masters, opening him up to some age-old principles of success and happiness. Henning is the author of the best-selling novel, The Dirt Merchants, a brave, inspirational, and triumphant true adventure. Although he's involved in multiple projects, including books, public speaking, events, and film, they all have one central theme: the direct coaching of kids and the coaches, parents, aunts, uncles, teachers, and other kids who influence them. He defines kids as young people just getting out of school, or people of any age who are young at heart. His films have been called a cross between The Breakfast Club, The Sopranos, and a Tony Robbins seminar, action adventure, musically charged, and I mean really musically charged, and transformational film experiences. Henning is finishing his 12th film, the third part of the Hit or Twist trilogy, and is embarking on an international film festival run featuring a number of his feature-length and short films, including Zen-tastic, Street Chase, and Hero, and A Hit or Twist. Additionally, Henning is co-founder of the Youth Mentorship Forum, hosted by the Upward Bound Mentorship Program at the University of Southern California. The forum was founded to cater directly to today's youth and the specific challenges they face. It brings together experienced, successful leaders who have committed to support their communities by mentoring young people looking for guidance to grow in a healthy, safe, and successful manner. Currently, Henning is also developing a women's empowerment epic film, The Saintly, produced by Sandra Scarletti and Scott Rosenfeld, a producer of Home Alone, Teen Wolf, and many other classics. And his company is Dirt Merchants Films. So at that point, let me welcome my good friend, Henning Morales. Welcome, brother.
Hey, thank you, John. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for being here and part of it. I usually start out the show with people I know with 2 questions. The first question I ask is if they remember when we first met. So that's my first question to you.
Oh yes, I think we met. We might have met in passing somewhere else, but the first time I remember having a conversation with you was at Ryan Long's event at LA Live, and that was back 2017, I believe, or 18, and that was a personal development event, and you were speaking, and I was speaking, and I think we met somewhere in passing.
Yeah,
was that the first time, or was that? Am I right or wrong about that?
Well, yes, it was that, but it was an event downtown at some kind of fashion place, I think. And
downtown, you were LA Live, yeah,
yeah, and you were speaking about the book Dirt Merchants, which I mentioned, and then you were talking about turning it into a film, which I was like, well, this is interesting. Here's this guy; he's never done it before. I mean, you were just full energy, 100% confident you were going to do this, make it happen. And so I think we had a conversation at that point. And then, of course, we connected further and further. And we'll get into that after, with that experience. But so that was my first question. And the second one was, what does live courageously mean to you?
Well, in your intro, you hit the nail on the head. In my opinion, there's either fear or love. You can't have both. It's fear or love. So living courageously is living through love and not fearing the unknown, not fearing the unexpected, not fearing what could happen, not worrying about it. And that's a challenge for many of us, especially those of us who are going after big dreams, big goals, big aspirations, because you're constantly dealing with new situations that you probably should be fearful of. But it's much better. Instead of feeling that fear, it's much better to feel that love and have faith that things will work out if you take the proper actions. So fear versus love. Choose love.
Choose love every time. 100%, man. And with that, to go back to you, let's share with the audience your journey. And you grew up in New Jersey. That's why I have my Bronx hat, because New York, New Jersey. I had to put it on for you.
Yeah.
But so you started out there, and I mentioned in your intro, when you were young, you were a troublemaker, knucklehead kid, like many of us growing up back in the day. And but that started you on a journey, and that journey eventually led to the stuff that you did, a motivational speaking all around the world. So take us on that journey from that kid, that troubled kid, because it influences so much of your writing and your films. So take us on that journey from the beginning.
Absolutely, John. Again, the Bronx is the best borough in all of New York. First of all, I have to say, and it's because it's the home of the New York Yankees. That's the reason.
All right.
Secondarily, because John's from the Bronx.
All right, so that's two good reasons for the Bronx.
Yeah,
all right.
The first time I went to New York ever was to go to a Yankee game in the Bronx. Growing up in New Jersey, I was a baseball player, John. I was a huge baseball fan, huge Yankee fan. Baseball, you could say I've played all sports, so baseball was my love. And by the time I got into high school, I was a recruited baseball player. That was and my sole purpose in life was to replace Greg Nettles at third base for the New York Yankees. And wow. That's what I was going to do. I switched from catcher. First it was to replace Thurman Munson, and then we lost Thurman, and I switched to third base, and and that was my sole purpose. I was a happy-go-lucky kid, fun, good student. And because of an injury, a sports injury, which I won't go into the details of it, but basically I got hurt and could not play sports anymore. And what that caused for me at that age, I had never had to deal with the fact that I wasn't, that I did not have a purpose. I did not have a direction. I did not have a way to go, because my way to go was always sports. And that's where my mentors were, my coaches, and in all the sports, including baseball, but football and basketball. I played in wrestling and tennis. I played multiple sports, and I always had coaches that would encourage me and push me to be better, and also to give me advice on life. And as you're coming of age, you need a lot of advice as a teenager. And I was 15 when that happened, and I lost myself. And you know what, John? I said I was the absolute best at sports in my mind at the time. I said, I'm going to be the absolute best juvenile delinquent. There won't be any. They'll be talking about me forever. And I set out to be the best possible juvenile delinquent possible, which isn't the best plan usually as a teenager.
But you set yourself a new goal. But it's kind of funny what you're saying. But later when you talk about your mentoring, you're right, because like sports for teenagers and for young people, having sports mentors, coaches, and leaders in the field of sports really can help kids growing up to become successful, to become happy, to be able to have a purpose and a mission in life. And not everybody does, because not every kids participate in team sports or have that purpose. But that's one type of thing that can influence young people for a positive. And when you lost that positive, then you kind of pivoted to something else, and that was your pivot because of the injury.
Yeah. Well, youth sports is such an important part of our culture in this country to develop young people. Any sport, doesn't matter what it is. Any sport every sport has that built-in coaching and mentorship. And as soon as I was able to coach my first son in Little League Baseball, I relished that opportunity. And I also was able more recently to coach my other two sons. And so I spent years coaching baseball, which was my first love. And fortunately for me, by the time I was able to coach my third year, I was able to pick the name of my team. And of course, I picked the New York Yankees. And so I really actually I didn't play third base, but my son played third base, and I coached third base for the New York Yankees. I did it. I made my goal. But back then, when a kid doesn't have a substitute, it's not that sports is the only way to go in terms of mentorship for kids. If there's no substitute, if there's nobody else that can fill that void, it's very easy for a kid to get off track. And we talk about that a lot at the youth mentorship forums. I know you came and spoke to the kids once over at USC, and we got knocked out of the game for a couple of years because the college was closed, just recently reopened. So we're going to get back to coaching these kids, and we emphasize it all the time. We don't just coach kids; we coach parents, we coach coaches, we coach educators, and just making them aware of the importance of having these kids have a direction, have a purpose, have a way to go. And that's what keeps kids out of trouble. And for me, I had never gotten in any trouble in my life prior to being knocked out of sports. And then after that, I lost my mind because I didn't have anything to replace that support structure, which sports gave me. And again, it's not even just the coaches, it's also the older kids and the better kids on your team. When you're a freshman baseball player and you can look up to people who are on the varsity team, those are your mentors. They're close to your own age, but that example also really helps a lot. And we showed that in Ann Hero more than anything else, that the older kids can be the mentors as well as adult coaches and whatnot. Yeah.
And so, okay, so that ended, like you said, you set yourself a goal to be the greatest juvenile delinquent. I don't know if you succeeded at that or not, but you probably got close. And that puts you obviously in another crowd instead of older sports kids giving you positive mentorship. Now you're getting negative mentorship by the other juvenile delinquents who are like, and so that took you, at least for a period of time, in a less than positive direction, right? So tell us a little.
Absolutely. I would do anything to get attention. At that time, a lot of fighting, a lot of acting up in class, a lot of acting a fool as much as I could to get people laughing at me. Although I was never laughing because that wasn't cool. So it takes a certain skill set to make this happen. And for me, my parents is interestingly enough, when I tell my story and when I started on this journey of coaching and mentoring, I felt a little reluctant because I didn't have a difficult upbringing. I grew up middle class. I grew up in a nice household. I didn't grow up around abuse or alcoholism or any type of issues. I grew up in a very regular situation, and I never had any issues with my surroundings. The challenge with that, though, I realized later, which is when I started to tell my story, people could relate. My mother and father, because I was always okay, they never really paid much attention to me because he's okay.
Right.
And that's something that we coach parents, even though your kid is doing great, still stay on it and see if anything changes. Because if something changes in their world, you need to know about it so that you can maybe take some action to help out. But they were totally not part of that process. So I couldn't depend on them because I didn't have that as my fail-safe prior. I never used my family as my support structure. It was always the sports. So they were out of the picture. And I just wanted to get attention. I wanted people talking about me. I felt such a void from not being able to perform on a sports field that I had to have that attention. I craved it, which is very immature. Sounds like something a 16, 17-year-old kid would do. And so at the time, it made perfect sense to me. And the crowd I was with, as you mentioned, the crowd I was with, as you get older, you graduate from troublemaker to juvenile delinquent to criminal. That's the ladder, and that's the way it happens. Yeah, that's the ladder on the wrong side of leaning on the wrong building, right?
That's right.
I was headed in that direction. We were getting older. I turned 17. I got my driver's license. My friends started getting into more and more problems and issues that were serious. And again, we're almost going to turn 18, and now all of a sudden the things that used to be fun and games now are serious. And it was in my first day of summer vacation in 1983. It was going into my senior year, and I went into this insane environment of sales gurus, motivational speakers, and it was a really weird thing because all of a sudden I went for this job interview, and I was surrounded by all these motivational masters that felt to me like coaches. They felt like sports coaches, but they were coaching business, making money, right? And I gravitated towards that group. And even though the circumstances were very strange and interesting, and if you want to know more about how that all goes, I have a novel that I wrote called The Dirt Merchants, as you mentioned earlier. We made several movies about this world, and it's just a really strange mix of young people who, many of whom came from the streets, who were becoming very successful in business and teaching business concepts. And that got me away from my troublemaker friends. It got me away from, it developed me a purpose. I learned things, and I can get into that. You might have another question before I get into what I learned during those first few months. And John, I completely changed. I was a different person. My mom comes up on Sundays to visit sometimes. She just left a little while ago. We talked about the Tao Te Ching, which is the ancient Chinese philosophy, and a theme of a recent movie that I made called, and the theme was, do people change, right? And of course the theme stated is, can people change? And we say, yes, people can change, because I was a different person. And it didn't take weeks and weeks, didn't take days, didn't even take hours. It was instantly. As soon as I started hanging around that energy, I changed and changed for the positive. And ever since that day, I've been passionate about sharing this message with people that you can change, that you should change if your life is not where you want to be. You should change and make the effort to change. And I've been doing that ever since. It's been 30 something years. Yeah.
Well, the thing about it too, that's in that, is that at that moment, you could say you had a choice. It might have been conscious, it might have been unconscious, or a combination of both, but you had a choice and a decision, and you made a decision. You had like two paths in front of you, and this path appeared and these people appeared, and you just gravitated towards that because that's what seemed to be the better path, the better choice, the better decision for you. And you're right. And in it, what you're saying too is sometimes change takes a while. People can change, but sometimes change happens like that in an instant. And so it's on, you never know how it's going to happen, but you always have a choice to make a change if you want to make a change. And that's up to you. So keep going with that. And so from there, you learn some things from them. So maybe, like you mentioned, share some of that with us.
Well, interestingly enough, you always have a choice. Every moment's a new choice, a new decision to make. Do the right thing or do the wrong thing. That's what my second movie's about. You were part of that movie. You helped me, mentored me through that process a little bit. Rebelistic. It's decisions, and I made the decision to hang around the positive people. And my troublemaker friend, my best friend at the time, I had two groups of friends back then. I had my troublemaker friends and I had my good citizen friends. I was still hanging on to my good citizen friends because they remember me from back in the day when I was a good person, and they were like, they would always scratch their head like, what the hell happened to this kid, right? Because I was very different, right? So I always hung on to both groups of friends, knowing I would come back to the good people. But my criminal friend, or my friend who was the worst juvenile delinquent with me, had a chance to join me in that journey and couldn't be bothered with all that positive thinking nonsense. And he used to call it positive thinking lollipops, and all those people are crazy. It's a cult. They got you in this cult, and you're going to snap out of it. And he was just so negative about it. He made a choice to not be involved with the positive people, and chose a life of crime. And that life of crime led him down a path of unhappiness, misery, confusion, sadness, upset, prison, in and out of prison for many, many years. So it's not trite when you say, we got to say, yeah, you have a choice, you have a decision to make. It's not,
Yeah.
It's a big deal, especially for young people. And this is why I zero in on that mindset. Now, our movies, we make movies for all ages. We zero in on that mindset because people are making decisions, John, as teenagers. They're going to affect the rest of their lives.
That's
They're
right.
making decisions on to go to college, not to go to college, to join the military or not join the military. You're making that decision at a young age, and you're making a decision to hit the books hard and become a great student, or go party with your friends. Go that route. These are decisions that teenagers are making, and these decisions are going to affect the rest of their lives. So it's important now at any age, but this is the time that we focus on. So when I met these guys, they were all young, brash. A couple of them that I gravitated to. I always gravitate towards like the most successful, like baseball players. Like I want to know who the best one is, so I can hang out with him and maybe get better. So I would gravitate towards the best ones. And they had cars, they had cash, they had vacations, they had nice clothes, they had beautiful girlfriends and went to fancy restaurants. These are all like kids in their early 20s, right? Now 17, to me, early 20s might as well be 100, right? That's old, right? 17, 19 is old, 20, right? So I gravitate towards these guys, and I learned first of all, I learned how to set a goal. Now, back when before all this, I didn't know that was something that you could do, set a goal. The goal is something that there's a goalpost and you kick the ball at the goalpost, right? That's the goal, right? It's not, you hit the ball over the fence. That's a goal. But I never knew, as interesting as this is, I never knew the concept of setting a goal in life or setting a goal to do this if it wasn't sports, right? So I realized you can set goals in other areas of your life, like set a goal to be a good person. Like, what a concept.
What a concept indeed.
Set a goal not to be a jerk. That was our first goal, right? Because I was kind of a jerk back then. And so, you set a goal. So that was very important to set a goal and then work towards a goal. Another big thing in the early days, things that were just made all the difference in the world that I had no idea about. And the idea of having a positive attitude, and we were kids that didn't read, but we didn't read Think and Grow Rich and Earl Nightingale and Tony Robbins and all that. We weren't readers. But if you read something, it was because you had to read it. You were forced to read, and you didn't like it. You didn't like the book, right?
Very true.
And again, I'm just talking about like my mindset. I know there's kids that love to read, and that's fine too. But I wasn't a reader. I didn't know about a book that could be like help you be successful. Like there's a mindset for success. I did not know that. When they first started asking me about my attitude, like how's your attitude, they would say all the time, right? And I always thought that was a bad thing because my mom would always say to me, "Don't give me attitude." Don't give me, or they would say you have a bad attitude. No one ever said you had a good attitude. I never heard that concept. So having a good attitude was something that was to me. I was like, wow, this is great. I could have a goal, set a goal, have a good attitude. Oh my God, I was so happy about this. You can't believe. And I remember the first day I came back from hanging out with those guys, and my mom was sitting on the couch. Never forget this summer vacation. It's hot and sticky. We got no air conditioning in our house. We had a big fan upstairs. I don't know if you remember the summers back in New York back in the early 80s. Oh my God. And brutal, right? So it's hot, sticky. And I'm out in the streets all day. I've been on the streets of that day. I was probably out in Queens. I wasn't in the Bronx yet, but we'll talk about my territories if you want, John.
Sure. We'll go there for a minute too, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. We have to go to the neighborhoods. And so I came home and I actually greeted them. My mom and my brother are watching TV on the couch, and I greeted them and I said hello, right? And my mom was like, "Hello? What do you mean hello? What's wrong with you? What happened to you?" Right? And my brother's looking at me. I guess my brother's probably 13, 14 at the time, right? And they're looking at me like I said, "What's wrong?" I says, "Well, my mom said this to me. I haven't seen that smile in years," is what she said to me.
Wow.
My heart broke at that moment because I realized in that statement, she was happy about that. She was happy about that, obviously, but she was in shock. And to me, it kind of all hit me, like the behavior, like my behavior was affecting all these people, especially my poor mom who didn't do anything. She didn't do anything to me, right? And I was just giving such a hard time. So it made it stick. So having a goal, having a positive attitude, those were two of the big ones early on, because I wasn't averse to working hard. I wasn't averse to, because I had gotten that training from sports, especially wrestling. Wrestling was the toughest workout. Anyone who's wrestled, that workout is insane to get ready for wrestling season. And so I wasn't adverse to working. So some of the things I learned also during those early days, John, going the extra mile, working hard. I didn't really have a problem with that one. Being a nice person, caring about the other guy. That was something that I had to really get my mind around that concept. Like, care about the other person, because I never thought about it. Like I'm picking fights with these kids, and when I was in high school, John, I picked fights, but I didn't pick fights. I didn't pick fights with smaller kids, and I wasn't a big kid. I was probably regular size, right? I was always find the biggest type, the biggest guy I can find, biggest, strongest guy I can find, pick with him, right? Because that gets people talking, right? It's no honor to beat up someone that's smaller, but if you can slay the dragon, right, then you can have some honor, right? So, but I was like, I never thought about like their feelings, like what they would be thinking. This kid is picking a fight with me. It's bullying, even though it's kind of bullying somebody that may be stronger, bigger than you. It's still bullying, right?
Sure.
But I didn't look at it that way. I didn't even care. I didn't think about it, right? And so at that moment, that was a big one. And when you're dealing in business and you're dealing with customers at any level, it's about what the other person wants. It's not about what you want to get out of the transaction. It's what the other person wants. Give somebody else, Zig Ziglar said, right? Give somebody else what they want. You can get whatever you want, right?
Right.
And so those three were probably the biggest ones that really made a huge difference. And I never forgot those lessons, those three from the early days. Yeah.
And then when did you pivot or begin motivational speaking, and how did that start? And then what was that journey as a motivational speaker and doing that before you got into the being an author and then being into the film side of the world?
Well, it started back in those early days after I learned the basics, right, and started to become successful. And I went straight to the top of that company. I broke all the records, that company. And because I was serious about applying the things that they were teaching. And I started to run the meetings. I started to run the trainings, and the groups got bigger and bigger. And then when that all went away, and that's a whole nother story. When that all went away, and I had to make another decision to go back to school, to go to college. And I dropped out of high school at that time, and I went back, got my GED at Bergen Community College. You know where that is, in Paramus, New Jersey.
We both went on that path of dropping out of high school and getting our GEDs. Yeah,
I got my GED, and it was so painful, because I was so embarrassed that I was doing that, because the people who did that it was a stigma to get a GED and go to community college. It was really a big stigma back then. And when you have pride, you feel that. So there was a little cubby hole just before you got up to my attic, a little like cubby there. And that's where I put all my books to study for my test. I put them in, I was hiding. I closed the door and I put my little lamp on. I would study in there. Nobody knew that I was studying for my GED. My mom didn't know, nobody. And finally I accomplished that goal. Went to Bergen Community College, and then transferred to NYU after 1 year, and graduated NYU top honors. I made Omicron Delta Epsilon, which is the Honor Society for Economics. I was on the dean's list every semester, and I made Omicron Delta Epsilon. And to me, that was a huge accomplishment, because being a high school dropout and not even being able, when I went back to college, I was reading like this. Literally, I had to say the words because I was such a bad reader. And eventually I came out to California for law school, to San Diego. And I was in law school for a couple of years at USD. And I met a whole nother group of mentors in San Diego that were tied into Tony Robbins and tied into a lot of the personal development movement that was going on in California back in the early 90s. I got right scooped up in the middle of all that. Eventually, I met some mentors that taught me how to speak publicly, how to command an audience, how to dress, how to posture, how to intonate, how to travel, how to set the big events, how to book the big events. And that group I called those the old guys, right? I had the young guys, the young brash guys in New Jersey. And then I had the old guys that were, I'll tell you three of the most influential people. One of them was Tom Hopkins, who, if you've been around the sales world, he's the one of the top sales trainers of all time. Bobby DePew was my mentor. He was my boss for 1 year. Bobby was Jim Rohn's first boss, and Jim Rohn is Tony Robbins' trainer, as a lot of people know. So I kind of had the bosses of the bosses, and also had some other mentors that were just very powerful. A lot of female speakers that were just commanded the stage. And I took to that because I realized that I wanted to share the message from when I was a 17-year-old troublemaker, confused teenager, to graduating with honors from NYU, which was a shocker. Like, nobody could believe, right? And then being in law school, and now I have a chance to learn from some of these people, and that's how I developed a passion for speaking to large audiences versus just doing the sales or doing small sales training. Speaking to large audiences because I could see the impact that I could have. The bigger the audience, the more impact I could have. Yeah.
It's kind of funny because I started hearing some of those speakers and motivators. At one point, I got a job at Jack and Lane Health Spa as an aerobic instructor and a salesperson. And my sales manager started playing those in his car. And at the time, I was like, I just thought it was silly, right? I was like, yeah, he's just, I started listening. And as I started listening, I started hearing the ideas, and they started to resonate, and then ran across Tony Robbins. And at that point, I had been working in the post office as a mail handler for 5 years. And I went and did his fire walk right next to my post office, did the fire walk, did the weekend seminar, and my life changed forever. And from that point, I made a decision to quit the post office, go for my dreams, which eventually took me to California. But it took me, from that point, motivation, like you, became who I was about. That's what I was about. Because if it could change my life, it could get me from stopping negative behaviors, which at the time I was doing, and transform me in that quick of an instant, a weekend. Wow, I wanted to spread that word to other people about how they could change and how they could pursue their dreams. So that's kind of led us, eventually to meet. But, so you went from the motivational speaking, you had all those mentors, and then at some point you decided to write this book, sharing your experience, Dirt Merchant. What gave you that decision? Why did you do that? And then, of course, that opens up the film stuff. So let's start with that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, John. And when I started to learn from my new group of mentors how to actually speak professionally, to me, that was like the most ultimate. All of the happiness that I had experienced while I was younger, I realized that I was happiest when I was teaching these concepts to other people. It wasn't just applying the concepts. Now, I had to apply the success principles and be successful. You have to apply it and be successful first. Otherwise, you can't share what you don't know, right? And one of the lines, Spencer's my alter ego in my movie. Spencer says, only something or other. I think it's a bad word. Only something or other would try to teach something that he doesn't know, you know. And we see that a lot. And to some people, that's a foreign concept. Why wouldn't I teach you something just because I don't know it? Well, because you just shouldn't, right? So I knew that it worked because it worked for me, and I applied these things and became successful in my own definition of success. Everyone's definition of success is different. I had my certain goals, I achieved my goals, and kept going. And so to me, I was happiest when I was sharing those concepts, when I would coach my friends, when my friends were having difficult situations at that time. And by the way, going back in time again, I'll come back forward, but going back when all that happened, I reestablished all my friendships with my friends. I nearly destroyed all my friendships because I was just such a bad influence on them and I had to go back and to me, when I went back and reestablished those friendships, people that I'm still friends with today, many of those people, some of which are collaborators with me on these movies, because they remembered me from back then and the change, which is also interesting. So redeveloping those friendships and coaching and mentoring after redeveloping those friendships, some of my friends even. And then when I was at NYU, I would always be the leader of the little study group, right, that we had, and helping even now kids that would think of me like wouldn't even want to be around me a few years ago in high school. Now I'm coaching. So my point in sharing that with you is that I knew that I found my calling. I knew that's what I really wanted to do, that I loved it. And I poured all my energy into that. And I did that for 10 years. And I traveled the world as a speaker, as a coach. And I spoke to groups of 25 to 2,500 to 5,000, 8,000 people, big audiences. Small audiences. Wherever there are people, I'll go talk, right, and share my message. And I taught on personal development. I taught on time management. I taught on goal setting. Taught on positive mental attitude, sales training, whatever you name the topic. And it's only because, John, I learned it from the best people. I learned from, and monkey see, monkey do. I copy what they do, right? So when I saw Jeff Olson and his talk, I copied that. I copied his talk. When I saw Tony Robbins' talk, I copied his talk. When I saw Tom Hopkins, I just basically duplicate what they did, but do it in my own way, right? Sure. And so it's not that I invented anything or I created. Maybe I put my spin on it, but these are principles that I knew worked for these other people, and I applied. So I was very happy and did that for 10 years. And eventually, back then you had to travel to go and do your talks. It's not like today where we could do this. You didn't have this back then. You had to go, right? And right. I want to settle down, have a family, so I couldn't do the talks anymore. I had to resign out of that. And I started an events production company in LA, which we eventually took public, and that's a whole nother adventure. And I got away from the speaking and away from the coaching. And so I started to write down my speeches, because when you do this consistently for a living, it's the same thing. It's like a play. Okay, you perform the same performance every night until it closes, and then you do the other one, right? So I started, back then I had everything memorized, and then I started to forget my stories. I started to forget my speeches, so I started writing them down. Eventually, that became a novel, which is called The Dirt Merchants.
On Amazon, you can get it on Amazon.
Yeah, you get Amazon, the Dirt Merchants. That's me. Yep. And then I want to go back and speak again, because that's my passion. My kids are now growing up. I can go back on the road now, and I'm ready to go. And my friends who are in the movie business, when they heard the story about the two juvenile delinquent kids, one becomes a motivational guy, the other becomes a criminal, and all the stories that come from it, and all true stories, they insisted on making movies. They turned me into a movie maker, which I was very reluctant to do, because I know how hard it is, and I know how hard people work in this industry. And it's like, John, when you first met me, you're like, this guy's gonna make movies. He don't know what's in store for him. He doesn't know what's gonna happen, right? It's hard to be great at something, and I just know that. And I was already a good speaker, so I said, why would I want to go make these movies? I got to learn how to do all this. And my friend said, no, don't worry about it. We'll help you. Right. And I got hooked. I made the first one and a little short film. And then I made a second one. And people dug the movies, and I started to get a hang of it. And one thing led to another, and now we've made several movies. Yeah. And
Well, I remember we met, like as you said, back at that event, and then I ended up helping with a couple of the films, and doing a little bit of everything, doing line producing, AD, and acting in one of them. Which you
Yep.
just we were just doing everything. You were just wearing all kinds of hats and just making it happen, and it was a lot of fun. And I met some great people on it, and then you just kept pushing it forward. And of course, I went off doing some of the films that I was doing, but I always saw you, like you were always out there turning them out one after another. I mean, just like against all odds. So before I go a little further, I think this would be a good time to just play the trailer, and then we'll talk about all the stuff you've done since you started that first one, and then we'll jump into that. So let me just throw on the trailer and let people see that, the audience see that.
It all started with the first installment of the Dirt Merchants film series, Romancery.
You go out there, you walk like you're going somewhere. You stick your chest out, you beat it.
Which morphed into a feature film version, Rebelistic.
Daddy, be fired up. Fired up. Let's go.
The true love and motivational Destinova. Then the raw persistence of Street Chase.
What does this guy look like again?
Skinny white guy with black hair. Capiche?
And to raise awareness for the Suicide Prevention Lifeline and Hero.
You guys are loosening. I'll drop you right now.
And the gritty, pretty love triangle, Hit or Twist.
He's messing with my stuff. I don't know.
You're shit! From you.
And it's gonna stay that way.
The Mafia Turf War, Cherryest Jam.
I would not let her take me down. Now that clock start.
Out of this world mindbender, Zentastic. The Italian-American rock operesque, Vino Royale.
Ma non puoi fidarti. Cosa sapere in questa americana delle nostre
The
cose?
youthful and strange, eccentric.
Who else would you give it, huh?
And the Chinese-American joint venture, X-Style.
Wow. A whole lot of films in a short period of time, man.
Yeah, it's 5 years. Made all that magic happen with only about 1,000 other people.
Well, yes, and there's a lot of things to say about them. Obviously, the music is unique and very special, but just the amount of quantity that you turned out during those 5 years, shorts, features, how you did it was pretty amazing too. I know some of the behind the scene tales of how you pulled off some guerrilla filmmaking and shot at places that is like impossible, but they let you do it anyway. But the other period where you kind of had a quote, I think you called it the years of insanity, which was the COVID, right? The COVID years when everybody else kind of shut down or hid or retreated. You went out there and still made films during those 2 years and found a way to keep going and keep making stuff happen. So that was something that I was also impressed by you as well. But tell us a little bit about the journey, the amount of films, the things you learned, and obviously we're going to talk a little bit what you got going in the future, because if you did all that in 5 years, I hate to see the next 5 years, and I mean that in a positive way, because there's a hell of a lot of content there.
Well, we're gonna be doing it together. So get ready. Get ready for the next 5 years. Again, I mentioned that my friends encouraged me to start making movies. Being in Los Angeles and being around the entertainment business for all these years, producing events, I've got some really great friends who are really great at what they do. And the first the first step was developing that mentorship, and you're part of that group, John, that helped me, even though it was a little bit later after the book had already come out when we had met. I had friends who gave me really good advice, and I also had some very good connections to help me kind of get off to a fast start in making movies. One of my mentors and very good friends is Andrew Lane, who is a very successful music producer. And another one, as I mentioned, John, is one of the people that helped me in the earlier years. And then Richard Walters is another one who's a co-founder at Bold Films. And I have other people, and I don't want to leave anybody out. There's a lot of people that really helped to get things rolling. But I had kind of an unfair advantage because I had all these friends that could show me. Now, none of these people are going to do anything for you. They'll give you advice. Then you gotta go do it. They'll give you collaboration, but you have to do it. Excuse me. So Andrew actually helped to cast the first. I knew nothing about making movies. I had made TV shows before, because in the personal development world, there's always interview shows that you do, and there's performance shows that you do. But making a movie is a whole nother world. It's not even anything close to what you do on television. On television, you go fast, you turn it out, and you keep going, right? Movies, you got to take your time, do it right. If you're making a film, you have to slow down and just cover all your bases. So the first one, John, I was very nervous about making a movie. I didn't know anything about making movies, but I did have Andrew Lane in my corner who said, "I'll help you." He said, "Look, man, these books have to be movies." And Andrew did produce High School Musical. He produced Hannah Montana. He produced Disney Mania. A lot of his early work was with kids, teenagers, teenage stars, right? And he gravitated towards the message for teenagers in these movies. It was very obvious why he was a fan of the book and why he wanted to make the movie. So the first one, I was so nervous about making a movie. I said, "Okay, we're going to make this all music." So I don't have to coach anybody on how to act, right? We just do music, right? And we got Andrew Lane. You can just do music. So it's 90% music. And second, I don't want to direct it. I don't know how to direct a movie. So I hired a director to direct it, and I wrote the script. Andrew provided the music, and I put it all together. I kind of led the charge of putting it all together. And to me, that one was so special because we made something very unique and very different that tells a story in a very unique way with all the music. And you do the first one. How do you make a movie? Well, make a movie, and then you learn how to make a movie, right? You learn all the things. And by doing a short, I was able to gather a skill set, develop a skill set. And Andrew helped me a lot. He was with me we cast the movie. And we cast the movie. We didn't cast based on acting necessarily. We cast based on a look that we were going for on this music video type of rock opera movie that we were making. And then I was also fortunate to have Mike Manning, who's a veteran actor, even though he's still a very young man, was young at the time, in his 20s, and to be the lead in the movie. So we had somebody who can definitely act, and also he's been on enough movie sets. He can also coach me on how it's all supposed to go, right? So he helped produce it and direct it, and produce it and acted in it. And then when we screened that, John, I screened it at a theater in West LA, and maybe it was 150 people there. I don't know how many people were there, and I was so nervous that I had so many. I didn't have this many doubts. I didn't have this many doubts in anything for a very, very, very long time. And it was butterflies were going. I wouldn't even go in the theater to watch it. I went down the block. I walked around the block 3 times while it was going on. And I came back in, and almost towards the end, I peeked inside, right? And everybody's staring at the screen, right? And to me, that was like, wow, they're still here.
I think I was there that night. I think I remember. It's the same screen.
Yeah. So people liked it. That to me was, if people aren't going to like this, then I'd rather go back to speaking, right? And not do this. We made one, we're done, one and done. So we said, let's go ahead and make another one, right? Let's have the crazy idea to expand it into a feature film. And then we had to go back to the actors that we cast for the first one. And remember, we didn't even really know their acting skills, and we coached them all, and they did a great job in the follow-up movie, which was Rebelistic. And that was a feature film, beautiful movie, and just lots of music, lots of drama, lots of thrilling moments. And then that led to the next one. And right when we were about to, we were filming the next movie, and my goal was to get a couple of movies done and then bring them out onto the festival circuit, which we were going to hit on 2020. And we had everything lined up. We had the financing, we had the events we were going to be hitting. At that point, we had 3 completed movies, 2 shorts and a feature, and we're working on another feature. And then 2020 hit, and we really, all our plans went out the window. And so rather than just go away, I got my investors together, my team, the group, who, are such great people, and they get it. They get the message. They're passionate about making these movies because of the messaging and the uniqueness and something different and good, and offering entertainment for younger people, family, if you will, that is not violent, that's not fantasy based, that's not superheroes and capes, and they're not shoot 'em ups, they're not horror movies. They're thrillers, and they're dramatic, and they're music, and they're pretty. And so offering something different, people just love that idea. That group, we said, okay, we can go away, or we can just keep making more movies. Everyone kick in, let's go. Everyone put in your assets, whether it's people, whether it's money, whether it's locations, could be stories, could be hands on deck. And then we continue to make more movies all throughout the great insanity of 2020 and 20.
I love that saying, the great insanity.
It's a great insanity because here's why. And I'm not making light of people that got sick, and I'm not doing that at all. The challenge with those of us, especially those of us who are making movies, is we didn't know what was happening next. If you remember, we didn't know how long this is going to last. Are we going to be able to plan events? Are we going to be, can we make a movie? Are we going to have to be social distancing? Do we have to put the mask on? How do we get there was all this unknown, right? So it was kind of crazy. Like people went crazy because they didn't know. And a lot of people were pent up. I know we're running out of time here, but pent up. But my point of sharing that is that we continued throughout that whole time period, finishing the movies that we were doing. And my awesome team, my great people kept funding, and I would kick in, they would kick in, and we just kept going. And I kept writing and writing and writing. And so in the end, when now is the time to release the movies, we made all these films. And I think that it's not that this blessing in disguise thing, but it could be something along those lines, because it gave us time to really learn the business, gave us time to perfect the movies, to work on our body of work and get them beautiful, get them really ready. And that's how we went through. And you just, there's three keys to pull from this, and the Live Courageously theme, right? Is that, first of all, there was a great unknown in a lot of things that we were doing. And we went into situations, we went on to film shoots not knowing if we could shoot or not. We all said we're going to get there, and worst case scenario, we all got to go home. And guess what? We never had to go home. Every time we went, and we shot in LA during the riots. The riots were just about to happen. We're shooting the scene on the thing. And in fact, that day, John, I'll let you get on with your closing question here. That day, I got a phone call. It's my actors. A lot of my actors are young. A lot of them are teenagers, 17, 18, 19, right? So the lead in the movie, his mom called. She said, you're going to have to come home now. And I'm like, why does he have to come home? And I said, well, they just closed LA. So if you don't come home now, you're not ever going to be able. So it's one of those things where, okay, the time said, okay, that's it for the day. Let's all go home. The riots are happening. LA's closed, and let's move on. So first thing is, that even through the unknown, you do it. Develop a great team that can handle whatever's going on with you, and nobody's going to freak out. Okay. And third is is finish what you started. If you begin a project, finish the project, no matter what, because people are counting on you. And one of the things I'm most proud of in this process, John, is that we made 12 movies now, 6 feature films and 6 shorter films, if you will. Every single movie we did on budget, on time, and we completed all of them. And if everybody has that mindset, no fear, we're gonna do it no matter what. We're all in this together. We're going to finish, then you got something. And that's how we got to where we're at right now.
Well, just to echo that mindset is what makes you succeed. And it's a hell of an accomplishment to accomplish all of that in 5 years and to accomplish it during COVID. And the lessons you're pointing out to people is that's how you may be afraid, you may not know how to do it, but you never get to completion unless you do it. And you started and you did it, and then you did it again, and you learned more, and you did it again. And no matter what, you those lessons that you're sharing are vital lessons for people in whatever field they're in, but especially in the entertainment as well. So to close up, I'm just going to ask you 2 things. One is the upcoming stuff that you have, and share some of that. And then I'm going to ask you to just share a little personal something that you're proud of personally, and I'll trigger that in a minute. But first, tell me, because I think that's one of the biggest accomplishments as well that you should be proud of. But talking about the film going forward, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, in completing the movies that we completed, in finishing, people notice. People notice what you're doing, and a lot of my friends who are in the movie business have been watching me through the years, and John being one of them. And basically, I'm very proud that what we were able to accomplish during those few years has led to some bigger projects now. And right now, we're in the process of releasing all the movies. We've got 12 movies that very few people have seen. We've been waiting until we could do events and promote properly, and also polishing the movie. So we polished the movies that we've made. Out of the 12, 7 of them are completely finished and ready to go. And the rest are being done over the next several weeks. So we're releasing those movies. And we have some very unique opportunities for distribution of those films. And at the same time, I've got 5 additional feature film scripts that I've written in this process. And one of the films that we made called X Tao, the producer Scott Rosenfeld was brought in by my Chinese production partners to critique the movie and tell us how we can make it better and how we can edit it better. Basically, we had a rough cut. And I was like, oh, great. You brought a producer that's done $1 billion at the box office to critique my little sub-$1 million movie. Not very nice, right? So he was kind about it. We made the changes. We developed a friendship. And because of that experience and because of him seeing that movie and also seeing my wife in that movie, he basically decided to come on with us to produce a new feature film called The Saintly. And we've been able to attract lots of great people. John, you've been with us on the team since the beginning. So I appreciate that and walking me through some of the landmines of getting into a multi-million-dollar production now for the first time. And so we're excited about that. It's about a female undercover operative who's changing careers to become an inspirational master. And so you can see how all the baggage and problems being a cop through the years just come right with her. So it's a cool little theme, women's empowerment, PTSD, really cool theme stated, and a great lesson and a great inspirational journey. And then we have that one is in late development. And then I have 4 other films that I've written: Metal Crush, Dirt Merchants 1 and 2, which are the original stories from the novel, which we never actually told the story from the book. And then an epic journey, multi-generational journey, Motec that spans many generations and is kind of the swan song. And all the movies are a series. They all go together. They all fit together. There's this big puzzle that comes together in the end. And it's going to be inspirational for a lot of people. I'm excited for people to see the films, make the new ones. And we're going to be busy here for the next several years making these movies, John.
And for people who want to get involved, and I look forward to working with you on this one, the Saintly in particular, as well as others down the road. But for people who want to get involved with Dirt Merchant Films, Dirt Merchant Universe, Dirt Merchants Tribe, where do people go to get involved, support you, see what you're doing? What's the contact information for that?
Yeah, just start dirtmerchantsfilms.com, just like it sounds, dirtmerchantsfilms.com. Everything's there. The trailers are all there. You can send an email, get involved with us. We're open to backers. We're open to collaborators. We're open to new friendships. We're open to motivators. And I want to just mention, we're marketing the movies primarily through the inspirational, motivational, transformational world. People like John Duffy who have a message and have a platform. That's how we're marketing. So if you have that, we're all about doing a joint venture where we can all make money on the sales of these movies, so we can make more.
Exactly, and touch people more, because that's the whole message from your whole life of motivation and mentorship and all that. And this is just another form that you're using to do the same thing and reach people in a different way. And so it's very powerful. I'm glad to have you on the show. Before we finish, and I'm going to ask you, any closing notes. You also recently had a very proud moment with, besides mentoring, being a parent, and that's something I just wanted to, if you're willing to share that.
Yeah. I can only share so much of that, but I can tell you this, that when you live with the principles and the integrity that John teaches, that we all learn from the masters from way back, and we're all passing down to the new kids. Being a parent's a big part of that, process, because everything you're doing rubs off on your kids, and a lot of the mentorship and coaching that I learned, I just give to my kids every single day, right? And so I've got 4 great kids. They're all motivated, great citizens, and good people. And my oldest graduated as a pilot from college in top honors, and was accepted into a very prestigious training program, officers training program in the United States Navy. And he is now serving our country. And again, for me to see this, the transformation of a kid that just was positive, happy-go-lucky, motivated, to now this like serious officer. He's still the same happy-go-lucky kid, but to see like the pride when we went to go to the graduation month back, and to see the pride in his classmates, and also my pride as a parent, and the concepts that we're sharing, they work. It's not an experiment. You can make your life better. You can have a positive impact on these kids. You can definitely do it. It's going to take a little work. It's going to take a little attention. But hey, we're working anyway. Might as well work at doing the right thing versus not doing anything about it. So I'm very proud of my oldest son. My other ones, they're all doing great. They're younger. They're paving paths and paving their way in this world. And in the end, when it's my time to start slowing down, I know that I've got four motivators out there that are just spreading positivity. And how could that hurt? How could that not help humanity? How could that not help the country? How can that help my community? How can that not help my neighborhood? I mean, it's going to be nothing but positive, and that's where we should be heading. And I guess that's my closing comment is head towards the light, head towards positivity, head towards a direction that's going to help people. And if we need to do some work on ourselves first, let's do that first. Do the work on yourself, then you share. Tell your story.
Right on. I think that's a very powerful message. And like you said, that person told you, your alter ego, you got to walk the talk. You got to be the example from what you learned. Clearly you are. Hey, Henning, thank you so much, brother, for being on this show and sharing this with everybody. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure knowing you and working with you. And let's keep promoting that positivity and encourage people to be the best they can be. Once again, if you want to check out Henning, dirtmerchantfilms.com, you can go there, look at the information, touch base, connect with them, get involved on any level that you can and support this activity. If you want to be part of that community, it's there. So look forward to this year. Look forward to making this film with you and look forward to the journey forward, man. Thanks a lot, brother. Appreciate you being on.
Yeah.
All right. Have a great one.